Today, the life you'll experience is the owner of a pager station, a destiny that rose from a single BP machine to striking it rich, then collapsed overnight. I lived through the full rise and fall of an entire era. My name is Chen Jiangwo, born in 1968 in a small county town in Hunan. 5 of us crammed into one single-story room. My father worked at a factory, my mother did odd jobs, and money was never enough. As a child, what I envied most was the supply store clerk who always had a digital watch hanging from his belt, ticking as he walked. To my eyes, that was the most impressive thing in the whole world. I dropped out before finishing middle school. The family couldn't pay for textbooks. I didn't cry. I packed a cloth bag and followed a neighbor uncle to the city to find work. In the city, I hauled goods, washed dishes, and eventually pushed flatbed carts at the wholesale market for a few cents to 1 yuan a day. After saving for half a year, I bought my very first digital watch. I wore that watch for 3 full years. When the band broke, I tied it with a rubber band. When the glass cracked, I wore it anyway. I always felt that as long as I had it on, I was no different from the wealthy. By my mid-teens, I was flipping digital watches and wristwatches at the market, buying low, selling higher, pocketing 2 or 3 yuan profit per piece. I discovered I had a natural feel for trade. In 1990, at age 22, I saw a BP machine for the first time clipped to the belt of a businessman. His staff could page him anytime, and he'd find a public phone to call back. I stood there completely dazzled. I asked the man where he got the BP machine. He said Shenzhen, several thousand yuan. Several thousand yuan, which was 5 full years of my savings. I couldn't sleep that night. All I could think about was that little box. I soon figured it out. The BP machine was just the terminal. The pager station was the core of the business. A station relayed signals and collected monthly fees from every subscriber. That was the real long-term income. In 1992, I scraped together 80,000 yuan. 20,000 was money I'd saved from years of selling watches. 60,000 was borrowed from 7 or 8 relatives and friends. Every loan documented with a written note. I rented a 20-square-meter shopfront, bought second-hand pager equipment, hired 2 young women who could type fast as operators, and in the autumn of 1992, Jiangwo Pager Station officially opened. For the first 3 months, I had fewer than a few dozen subscribers. I sat in the shop doing nothing, while relatives came asking for their money back. All I could say was soon, soon, with no real confidence at all. The turning point came in 1993. More and more coastal businessmen were moving into our inland county, carrying BP machines. As soon as they arrived, they came to register, and our subscriber count jumped past 200. 200 subscribers paying 30 yuan monthly meant 6,000 yuan a month. After rent and wages, I netted 2,000. For the first time, I felt certain I was on the right road. From 1994 to 1997 were the most glorious years of my life. The station expanded to 3 operator banks. Subscribers broke 5,000, and 8 out of 10 business owners in the whole county had registered with me. At our busiest, 6 operators were all on the line simultaneously, phones never stopping, a chorus of female voices reading out numbers one after another. That sound is something I will never forget. I bought my first commercial apartment in the county, 100 square meters, 2 bedrooms, 2 living areas. I was the only buyer in the whole building who paid outright. The sales rep treated me like a VIP and kept my teacup topped up. I clipped a Motorola pager to my belt. Back then, wearing a Motorola on your hip was a statement of status. When you walked down the street, people looked at you differently. In those years, my monthly net profit ranged from 20 to 30,000 on slow months, and as high as 50 to 60,000 on good ones. In a county town in the mid-90s, that was the entire 3 to 4 year wages of an ordinary worker. I upgraded the station to a 10,000-line pager exchange, purchased the latest switching equipment, and brought operator headcount to 16. 3 rotating shifts kept us running 24 hours without stopping. I set up a staff dormitory and raised wages. I handed out bonuses at holidays. Back then, I felt like a real boss, someone responsible for giving the people who worked for me a better life. I joined the County Chamber of Commerce and sat in conference rooms shoulder to shoulder with factory directors and company managers. People who once wouldn't give me the time of day were now calling me Boss Chun. On the day Hong Kong returned to China in 1997, I turned on the TV in the pager station. My operators watched between calls. I bought beer for everyone. Everyone said it was the best of times. That was the highest point of my life. The station's bank account held over 200,000 yuan. I stood in the middle of that humming machinery and felt that I had everything a man could want. In 1998, I heard for the first time that someone had bought a mobile phone, old Zhang the scrap dealer, who paid over 4,000 yuan for an Ericsson. I laughed at him for wasting money. A BP machine cost 100 or so. Why spend that much? But by 1999, mobile phones were everywhere, and prices were falling fast, from 4,000 to 2,000, then to over 1,000. Every price cut made me feel something shifting inside me. Starting in 2000, my pager station subscriber count fell every single month, first by several dozen, then by 1 to 200. One by one, my loyal long-term customers came in to cancel and return their machines. Unwilling to give up, I traveled to the provincial capital for a pager industry conference. Half the owners there said they'd hold on. The other half were already calculating how to pivot. I didn't know who to believe. To keep subscribers, I cut the monthly fee from 30 yuan to 20, then to 10, and finally launched a 6-month free package. But users kept leaving and I couldn't stop them. In 2001, I made a decision. Borrow 500,000 yuan and open a mobile phone shop. People were done with BP machines, but they still needed to buy phones. I believed I could make this work. I opened the phone shop, but there were already 2 others right next door and one across the street. We all sold the same handsets and undercut each other on price. Within 3 months, I had lost 80,000 yuan. I also tried PAS wireless phones, a product between a landline and a mobile, because the price was cheap. I thought it was my way out, but after pushing it for most of a year, the market was completely crushed by real mobile phones. By 2002, the pager station was down to fewer than 300 subscribers. Of 16 operators, only 3 were still at their posts. The machine sat quiet for hours at a stretch. That silence was harder to bear than any noise. I started adding up the numbers: bank loans, supplier debts, unpaid wages, unsold phone inventory. All told, I owed roughly 700,000 yuan, and the account held less than 50,000. In the spring of 2003, I closed the phone shop, sold off remaining stock at deep discounts, and recovered barely half of what I owed in supplier debt. Drowning in debt, I felt for the first time that I had no way out. I called each operator one by one to say the station couldn't hold on and was closing. I was sorry. That night, I drank a lot of alcohol, sitting alone in the empty machine room, crying for a long time. I used the last of my cash reserves to pay out the employees' wages. Several operators stood at the door weeping. They had worked with me for 5 or 6 years. One of them I had introduced to her husband, and she was now married. I sold the equipment cheap to a scrap dealer. The day they hauled away the switching system that had run for 10 years, I stood in the doorway watching them go. It felt like seeing someone off for the last time. The apartment I had bought outright eventually sold at below market value. Most of the money went to pay debts. With what remained, I rented a 2-bedroom flat, and the whole family moved in. I went back to the wholesale market and set up a mobile phone repair stall, learning the trade from scratch. A 40-year-old man sitting on a small stool fixing other people's phones. Occasionally someone recognized me. The look in their eyes is not something I want to describe. The debts were paid off slowly over years. The hardest part was what I owed relatives. I couldn't look them in the eye when we met. I dreaded Chinese New Year visits. Those years I drifted apart from many people. It took 7 full years. By around 2010, the last debt was cleared. That night, I didn't celebrate. I made a bowl of instant noodles, ate it, and went to sleep. Later, I rented a counter in the county's small goods market and sold phone accessories. No more big ventures. Open the stall, close the stall, day after ordinary day. Sometimes old customers would come by, recognize me, and say, "Boss Chun, we all had accounts at your pager station back then." I'd smile and nod, unable to say exactly what I felt. In 2015, rummaging under the counter, I found an old BP machine, Motorola, the very one I used to clip to my belt. Somehow I had never thrown it away. I put in a fresh battery, and the screen actually lit up. When those pixelated numbers blinked on, I stared for a long time. My eyes went warm. I couldn't explain why. I brought that BP machine home and set it on the desk. My son picked it up and turned it over for a while. "Dad, what is this?" he asked. I said, "This was the most valuable thing your dad owned when he was young." Sometimes when I can't sleep at night, I take that BP machine out and hold it in my hands. No sound comes from it at all, but in my mind, I can still hear the phones ringing one after another in that old machine room. In my life, I caught the years when BP machines were at their most glorious, and I watched with my own eyes as they went from nothing to everything and back to nothing. A booming era, and just like that it was gone. No one's fault. The time simply moved on. This life chapter of mine, you've experienced it now.